Election day in Alabama, voters have 3 more hours to choose between Republican Roy Moore or Democrat Doug Jones. Polls close at 7 p.m. local time, 8 p.m. Eastern. It's a race the nation has been closely following after the Washington Post broke a story last month alleging Moore engaged in sexual misconduct with minors decades ago. Can Moore pull off a victory tonight? He was down 10 points, according to our most recent Fox poll. We have 2 election experts with us at the table tonight. Bret Baier and Martha MacCallum are hosting special coverage tonight on the Fox News channel. Welcome to you both.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us. Good to see you guys.
Hi.
Excited. Another election night.
Yes. I know. Can you believe it? Here we go again, right?
No, I was saying to Bret earlier, it feels like 2016 never really ended.
No, it never did. We've been covering the 2016 election for, going on 3 years now. I think. Yeah.
This is going to be fascinating. It's all going to come down to turnout, who comes out, who doesn't. And I think we're going to get a sense of things. 6, early 7, we'll have our own exit polls this year.
Called Fox News Voter Analysis now.
That's
Very
right.
exciting.
Fancy name.
Yes, they have a new method.
Yeah.
What is
Very
it?
exciting. It's a mix of calls and internet and interviews.
I didn't want to know. I was just being polite.
It's better than the last one.
He actually doesn't care at all.
It's going to work better. I think it's going to be a very interesting referendum tonight on the whole issue of sexual harassment, which has obviously become so front and center. So will these voters say that this is something that is so serious and so egregious, what Roy Moore was accused of, and he says he didn't do, that it causes them to vote against him? And I think there's going to be a lot of takeaway for that for other races as well, since you've got a lot of people sort of clamoring down there. You've got Cory Booker down there, people who clearly want to make this an issue going forward in 2018 and 2020. So it's going to be our first test.
So if he wins, let's assume for sake of argument Moore wins, what will be the message for other politicians that are dealing with their own sexual misconduct allegations? Is the message, if I deny, and make it about a fake news, Washington establishment conspiracy against me, I can hang on?
Well, or that you're a Republican in Alabama.
And that's a specific state
so,
that
you can't
the
take away
Democrat, bigger picture.
Doug Jones says if he wins, and, our poll had him up 10 as of yesterday, they said if he won, that it would be because a Democrat could win in Alabama, and that is in doubt. Many years, because it's about as deep red as any state can be.
Yeah, President Trump, Kimberly, won by 28 points. So Moore could lose Republicans by 25 points and still eke out a win.
Yeah, so it's going to come down to really just getting the vote out and who is more persuasive in doing that and compelling voters to get out there and make sure the Democrats have a lot to gain by having an upset here. So I would expect that their ground game would be good. But the advantage you would think would go to the Republican candidate. But President Trump really waited a little bit to get in this and doing kind of a last-minute robocall. He stood down and didn't, condemn him like others in the Republican Party did. But is that going to be enough to give the push to kind of have that popularity and groundswell of support for President Trump transfer over to Roy?
I have to say, I've been pretty hard on Moore, and I think I've changed my mind on him. Did you know that his lawyer is a Jew?
I heard that.
Yeah, if his horse groomer is black and his vest tailor is gay, I'm in.
You're in.
I'm in. And I don't even vote in Alabama. But the problem with this whole election is...
Do you want to give us some context?
Yeah, I was going to say, maybe we should fill that in a little bit.
It's bad enough to ruin our
his wife
careers.
announced
Leave them out
that
of
he
it.
has his lawyer's a Jew. That's important.
Yeah, because she wanted to make sure that no one thought they were anti-Semitic. So she said, hey,
Yeah. And,
check out our legal team.
I said this before, I feel bad for the Alabamans because they were presented with almost an artificially polarizing choice. If you vote Democrat, therefore you're voting for an anti-gun, anti-life, pro-abortion, and you're going to burn in hell. But if you vote for Moore, you're voting for a pedophile, and you're going to burn in hell. That's the 2 choices you have. I love America. We only have 2 choices. It's either the pedophile or it's the commie traitor.
Yeah, right. Well, that's what they always say in Alabama, especially if you're black and you're a civil rights activist. But let me just say, in explaining what you were talking about, that he has said things about George Soros, who's a Democrat, big fundraiser for the Democrats, and Jewish, that suggests that, oh, well, it doesn't matter. Soros doesn't believe in Christ. He's going to hell anyway. And that's what that started the whole discussion about, is he anti-Semitic? But today, I think, by the way, Kimberly, I think President Trump, by going down to Pensacola and getting involved in the Alabama media market, was making a pitch, and it's been very clear that he is endorsing Roy Moore. It's
still a little late in the game. He hasn't been persuasive.
You know, I think
he didn't endorse him to begin with.
No, he had Luther Strange.
Absolutely.
And there was news today from Mitch McConnell who said Luther Strange is going to stay in the Senate through the end of this term, no matter what. So he's going to have that Republican vote if that's the concern. But the thing I was going to raise was that today it's also the talk about sexual harassment back at the White House because of a tweet from President Trump with regard to Kirsten Gillibrand. And so you think about how sexual harassment is going to play in Alabama. Look at how it's playing in this country. Here's a response from Gillibrand.
Well, actually, I do have the sound from Sarah Huckabee Sanders, who answered this at the White House, so we can roll that.
That comment, frankly, isn't something new. If you look back at past comments that this president has made, he's used that same terminology many times in reference to men. There's no way that this is sexist at all. This is simply talking about a system that we have that is broken, in which special interests control our government. I think only if your mind is in the gutter would you have read it that way. And so, no.
Oh, I love that.
It's hilarious.
Oh, I thought her answer was excellent. And you should have seen April Ryan, is that her name? Her response, or the look on her face. Sarah's absolutely right. He has used that same line with men forever. And if you actually read sexism into that comment, you're the sexist. Because if you believe women cannot handle that line the way men do, which is that they'll do anything.
Well, he did it with Mitt Romney.
He did it with
He said he was begging for my endorsement.
Yes.
I could have said, Mitt, drop to your knees. He would have dropped to his knees.
But he didn't
Oh,
even
my gosh, my mind goes straight to the gutter with that.
No, but I mean, I'm talking about when he said it to Cruz. That Cruz would do anything. So he has said, "We'll do anything," and he says it to everybody. But when you say, "Oh my God, that's sexist," in your head, you're saying that women cannot handle the same insult that a man. And that the weird thing about Trump is he insults everybody.
But Greg,
no one is saying everybody.
But Greg, you would admit that, gee, that crossed my mind when I read that comment.
Not when it
pretty
was
insulting about a woman in the way that you might.
About a woman. You're a sexist.
I'm a sexist
about a woman.
Because guess what?
He's talking
That's
about
what
you.
came to my mind. I'm like, wow.
I don't have, my mind's not in the gutter, Juan.
Let me just tell you something. I wouldn't speak that way to a woman. I think you'd get in
That's
big
sexist.
trouble. That'd be in big trouble.
That's sexist. If you can say it to Cruz,
He's trying to say
you can say it to Gillibrand. You can. That's the ultimate colorblind, sex-blind world we should live in.
I agree with you.
Yeah.
And I also think when you look at this is the typical Trump counterpunch, right? And that's another reason that he stuck up for Roy Moore, because he saw that this conversation was going to circle back around,
right?
Because it's what's been going on in the country. So he's saying Roy Moore is pushing back against the allegations, saying that they're not true. He's allowed to say that. And President Trump is saying the same thing, and he is going to push back. There are plenty of men, Al Franken and others, who have said, I'm retiring, I'm resigning, I'm getting out of the game, I'm done through this.
Right.
But there are some men who are not going to take that route, and he's one of them.
And what he does often is get to the line, right where the line is.
Yes.
And then
Jumps it?
says, why are you thinking this?
Right.
So when Elizabeth Warren tweets that it was slut-shaming in her tweet, that sent Washington into a tizzy.
Yeah, she's inferring.
I didn't like that either, by the way.
Warren is inferring something, not Trump. But you know why he gets at the line? Because it allows for ambiguity. Anybody can interpret it now. You have to, and then everybody becomes a mind reader. Oh, he meant this, he meant that. It's like you can argue.
But he has a history of meaning over the line.
I think this one was sufficiently under the line.
Really?
Yes.
I don't see how you.
But see, I don't see gender or color, Juan.
I appreciate that.
Elizabeth
Wait,
Warren
not
did.
anymore? Not anymore? Okay.
What are you talking about?
You know what? I think that saying that someone will do anything for money is a very low blow, whether you're talking about a man or a woman. And we saw that he said the similar thing about Mitt Romney, similar thing about Ted Cruz. So I do think he's got a decent argument in lining up the things that he said in the past. And we know that he's willing to go there to that level with human beings. And I don't think it necessarily has to do with whether it's a man or a woman.
Well, it's not something a politician would ever say, and he's not a politician. He's a businessman who donated to Democrats and Republicans, so he's used to dealing with that. Let me ask you guys, because, D.C. people here, you understand the Senate. I'm sure you saw my brilliant commentary yesterday, Brett, about the possibility of Moore winning this race and going into the Senate, and it's a very social environment. Is he a pariah when he gets there? No one wants to dine with him. No one wants to associate with him. Does that incapacitate him as the representative of the people from Alabama?
Well, listen, I think the Republican Party, establishment Republican Party, is looking at it as a tough moment, how to deal with it. It is a 2-year seat. So they are thinking no matter what happens, they're going to get a Republican back in 2020, whether it's Roy Moore or not. I do think that some people have been pretty bold in what they're saying in the Senate about trying to get rid of him should he sit. I just don't think that that's going to happen.
Why you don't think that's going to happen?
No, I don't think the people of Alabama, after voting, if he wins, would stand up and say, you can't take him out. I mean, I just don't think
that's a little different than saying that you could be on the Hill, keep your seat, and be a pariah. And I would argue that before any of this even happened, Roy Moore was in that position.
Yeah.
Just based on his prior controversial statements. He was already in a rough spot going in. I mean, remember, before any of this happened, Mitch McConnell didn't want him there. President Trump didn't want him there.
Right. Exactly.
So, you know, he was
the outsider,
he's dug the hole deeper with all of this. But he was always going to be in a
You know what I think is the telling blow, though, and it could be something that we look back on, especially if Jones wins, is Richard Shelby, the senior senator from Alabama, saying he can't vote for Roy Moore. And it's more than just Shelby as a senior member of leadership in the Senate saying it. I think that what you have is inside Alabama, the business establishment especially, saying that if we select Roy Moore, it's going to send a message to the business community nationwide, globally, about who we are. We want to change our image. We want to seem more open to people.
He also said he couldn't vote for Doug Jones. But
right, but he just voted. He just said he voted for write-in. But I think that when you see people now saying, you know what, we've got to change our image in Alabama, I think it became kind of the closing argument, and it comes from Republicans, which is why I think you have Republicans at Republicans in Alabama over Roy Moore.
Well, Cory Gardner from Colorado said that the Republican Senate campaign committee was not going to get into that race. They were not going to support Moore.
Right.
The RNC broadly did, but the Senate campaign did not. And so that's a problem on day one.
Are you saying that it becomes like a North Carolina bathroom problem where people start pulling out of conferences, they start pulling out of the All-Star game?
Yeah, I think you start to lose.
Switch positions.
You get a lot of sports.
I don't know.
That wouldn't play. I mean, but to come back to Shelby, he technically would be the one who would lead Roy Moore down to swear him in most situations. It ain't going to happen, I don't think.
Jesse's more concerned about the lunch politics. Whether or not he's going to have a lunch buddy, if we're going to share Lunchables together, are you going to drink that juice?
And it's going to be more at the one table.
I think that table's getting bigger.
It's true.
Hang out,
All right, Brett and Martha will update us throughout the night as the votes are counted. Thanks to you both for joining us.
Thanks for having us.
It was quite a pleasure.
I mean, this is quite something.
I had the family of the accused Manhattan subway bomber is outraged at law enforcement. Wait till you hear this one next.
I don't know the Muslim word for chutzpah, but the family of yesterday's failed New York bomber is full of it. They're attacking law enforcement for so-called heavy-handed tactics. What say you, New York chapter, the Council on American Islamic Relations? I bet you're outraged.
We are also outraged by the behavior of the law enforcement officials who have held children as small as 4 years old out in the cold and who pulled a teenager out of high school classes to interrogate him without a lawyer, without his parents.
The children! They put children out in the cold, which can happen when you take them outside briefly to a waiting car. And I'm sure the teen jerked out of high school was heartbroken. He was probably busy in shop class building a clock. But it's a common reflex to use kids as a defense. Clearly, it's not about the terror attack at all, but about the children. But they're right. We shouldn't be questioning the family. We should be putting them up in a 5-star hotel with nothing but the best food and entertainment, maybe tickets to a show. Try Book of Mormon. You get a kick out of that. Or why not visit the Freedom Tower for a guided tour? Kara also said this.
These are not the sorts of actions we expect from our justice system.
Well, terrorism is not the sort of thing we expect from decent, law-abiding humans. But yeah, it's our justice system we got to worry about. So I offer this humble suggestion to the family. It's the justice system that is protecting you from your own family member. So you should not only thank these officers, but also you should cooperate, because if this were any other country, including the one that you left, family members of a terrorist would be collected and probably never heard from again. But I guess that's why you're here for now. Dana, tone-deaf response?
From them?
Yeah.
A reflexive response. I mean, you see this across, especially in the UK, where they're honestly, I understand their concern, right? But their reflex is to use our system against us.
Right.
And to say, oh, you were doing something bad to us. Like, well, no, actually, the police are worried about children, too, which is exactly why they came to try to find it, because the police are in a race against time.
Yeah.
Because what if there was something coordinated? What if somebody knew that there was actually multiple bombs that were being made in the house and they were fanned out across the city? And so time is of the essence, and our law enforcement deserves our full support.
You know, Kimberly, they're concerned about the safety of the family, too. They got to get they don't want that kid to be beaten up or whatever. That's their priority is to make sure everybody's taken to a safe place and they can be questioned. What's wrong with that?
Well, there isn't anything wrong with it, obviously, but this is kind of the tactic that they do. This is just really kind of like the book. They go by the book, say, okay, we're going to attack law enforcement, we're going to attack the American justice system, we're going to find any way we can to find fault with it, to distract and deflect and flip the script on them, to say that this is really about an injustice being committed against a terrorist. But is anybody really buying this besides CARE?
Yeah.
No.
Because this is what they do. It's why they don't have any credibility, and they go ahead and they're sympathizers for terrorists and for jihad, and they're enablers, and I have no time for it.
Juan, should the law apologize to the family?
I don't. I was when this first started. I thought, well, what did they do?
Yeah.
Did they hurt somebody? Did they beat somebody up? In my mind, we live in a country where you just have to take your hat off. I mean, I think of the situation where the guy was from New Jersey and he was found to be up to, I forget exactly what the attack was. Maybe it was here, Times Square. And they took him to the hospital.
Yeah, was it the Chelsea attack? I'm not sure.
No, I don't think I'm not sure. But anyway, my point is that guy gets first-rate, world-class medical treatment.
Yeah.
Same thing with this guy. This guy's in the hospital here.
Yeah.
And I think that you're right. There are a lot of places where, savage human reaction would rule the day. Not in the USA, thank God, but that's true. So when they said this, I thought, well, were they roughhousing the family, or did they roust them out of there? And what did they say? They took a child outside, and I think it's 40 degrees yesterday.
Yeah.
Come on.
I know. Jesse, did you see I guess the terrorist had posted comments about Trump on Facebook?
Yes, he was taunting the president.
Yes, exactly. He said, thank you for, you failed to protect America.
Yeah, good one, buddy. And he also set off the bombs because he was offended by a bunch of Christmas placards near the train station, too. So the guy is just so ungrateful, and we've seen this. A lot of these bombers, they come here on a lottery system or through some immigration loophole. They get here, they're either receiving welfare, food stamps sometimes, they get freedom of speech, freedom of worship, freedom of expression, yet they hate this country so much they want to attack it. And CARE is probably the worst PR that American Muslims could have. If I had a family member that came into another country, tried to set off a bomb, and then he got busted literally red-handed, I would apologize, hide, and then cooperate. But instead, they send CARE out to read a statement to undermine law enforcement and to try to play the victim card. If they had set off a bomb in Bangladesh, where they came from, I'm sure law enforcement would have been a little more aggressive.
I was watching Rick Leventhal. I didn't know that the guy actually used Christmas lights in the making of the bomb.
War on Christmas. Again.
War on Christmas.
Sorry, I had to.
You know what? It's still funny.
Some habits.
Jesse, it's still in your system. It's still in your system. You can't get it out.
It's the longest war.
It's the longest war ever.
Oh my
All right.
God.
President Trump addressed the terror attack today and called again to eliminate the immigration policies that allowed this latest terrorist into our country. That's next.
You've never seen anything like this. Ridiculous, outrageous talent doing ridiculous, outrageous stuff. Tune into Games.
Back now to the New York City subway attack. It once again put a spotlight on some of the dangerous immigration policies we have in place. President Trump addressed that earlier.
There have now been 2 terrorist attacks in New York City in recent weeks carried out by foreign nationals here on green cards. The first attacker came through the visa lottery, and the second through chain migration. We're going to end both of them. The lottery system and chain migration. We're going to end them fast. Congress must get involved immediately, and they are involved immediately, and I can tell you we have tremendous support. They will be ended.
Okay, so the earlier terrorists, I think last month, came here through the lottery, which is basically, you know, throw it into a wheel and up, Iran, Iraq, Somalia, you're in. And then, you know, the recent one earlier this week came in through chain migration because his mom came and the uncle. Do you think this deserves to be looked at and reformed?
I do. I think that it's a smart incremental step. I think it's not the ideal that we would love to have in America, but we don't live in a utopia. We live in a country and we have to protect ourselves. And it's actually in line with many of the other countries that are our allies. Australia, the UK, Germany, and Canada all have some sort of merit-based system. Yeah. And so I think that it makes perfect sense to go to that. And what I could see happening is that you had today Paul Ryan say that DACA, the Dreamers, is not going to be in this end-of-year spending bill. They're going to push it to the next year, and it looked to me like Senator Schumer was acquiescing to that. So you could actually see in January, February, the president able, in the State of the Union address, say that we are moving forward on a comprehensive immigration bill that will give him more border security and some sort of a wall thing that he can call a wall, chain migration ending and going back to this, going to a merit-based system, and then something that something to help the Dreamers.
Democrats may say, Greg, that you got to reunite families and chain migration. Once you want to keep families together, what would you say to that?
This is how you do it, because if chain migration can go in one way, it should be able to go the other way. So we can pull the chain. Right. If one link in that chain, you're all out. Yeah. So imagine the amount of scrutiny among the family that has to increase when you're going like, gee, what's he doing? He's spending a lot of time in the basement. Can we check it? He's made some new friends. You know, so it causes everybody to act like everybody else. When you're a family, you should know, in a community, you should know what's going on in your family. And the thing is, you know, two things matter for these families: family and religion. All right, we might not be able to shake certain people of their extremist religious ideology, but we can help them focus on the family, and that's what this would do.
That's a good point Greg made. What say you, Juan Williams?
I think
Juan, how can you ruin this good point?
I wouldn't attempt to.
Let's count the ways.
Because it's just so much fun. You know that thing, you appeal to anger and frustration.
He made a good point about you're more vigilant when you know you could be in jeopardy if your cousin or your aunt.
Let me just say, here's what's going on. So President Trump is playing on fear of immigrants and demonizing immigrants right now, taking advantage of this terror attack.
Oh my gosh.
You know why I say that? Because in fact, there is no evidence. There's nothing on the table that would suggest that this guy, in fact, came over here intending to commit a terrorist act. He just came over here and then he was radicalized while he was in the USA. We've seen this.
Potentially. You don't know this yet.
There's no, the police say it. Everybody says it.
The investigation traveled overseas back and forth.
Yes.
This investigation is not complete, Ron, unless you can see into the future.
Like, chain migration brought him here. Stop chain migration. Not a bad thing.
But that's crazy. I mean, even the Baltimore Sun
today. You like
chain
migration?
I think keeping families together, I think that's overwhelming.
I think it's overrated.
Hear the numbers.
Families are overrated, Juan.
Oh, families are overrated. I like them. I like them. Let me just say, it says that between 2005, 2015, in a 10-year period, 9.3 million new immigrants. You know, overwhelmingly, these people contribute to American society. These are great.
You are smearing all immigrants right now. You're conflating terrorists, all immigrants.
Let me just tell you.
I'm ashamed
Here's what the Baltimore Sun said. The Baltimore Sun said, this is an editorial, shame on the Trump administration for stoking mindless fears and condemning millions of valuable contributing immigrants.
They are conflating.
Who are proud Americans.
They're conflating terrorists with immigrants.
We're not. Racist, Juan. So, Kimberly, why is a merit-based system, in your opinion, something that we should look at more? You know, after this.
Why wouldn't you? I mean, this is a situation where chain migration is what? Based on what? We're just going to let everybody in. There's no accountability. There's no personal responsibility. There's no familial responsibility. And then for him to say that, oh, President Trump, trying to blame it on President Trump. He didn't go out and commit an act of terror. He didn't go out and do it. He's not somebody that, but yet it's his fault somehow, and he's demonizing people. He's talking about an actual act of terror that was committed by someone who came in this country through chain migration.
Oh, I see. And he had so much to say, Kimberly.
Example
so
of
much
this.
to say about Las Vegas and Charlotte. Oh, I wonder what he said about. Oh, silence.
Certain things.
So what did that have to do with chain migration?
Was the shooter?
Las Vegas had nothing to do with it. It's completely nonsensical. They're very different, disparate situations.
All right. A new bombshell.
Remember that senior DOJ official who was demoted last week for concealing his meetings with the people behind the anti-Trump dossier at Fusion GPS? Well, we have now learned that Bruce Orr's wife, Nellie Orr, worked for the opposition research firm that produced the document intended to derail President Trump's campaign. In light of that and other concerns, Jay Sekulow, a member of the president's legal team, is now calling for a second special counsel to investigate the investigators. He says the DOJ and the FBI cannot ignore obvious conflicts of interest. Attorney General Jeff Sessions isn't opposed to the idea. He told Fox News today if cases aren't being reviewed as they need to be by the Justice Department and the standards for a special counsel are met, a recommended counsel should be established. Here is the press secretary on that subject.
I think it's something that certainly causes a lot of concern, not just for the president and the administration, but I think probably for all Americans, and something that if we're going to continue to investigate things, let's look at something where there's some real evidence and some real proof of wrongdoing, and this looks pretty bad, and I think it's something we should certainly look at.
Okay, Greg, you like that?
Yeah, you know, it's fairly obvious. You have to ask yourself, who's dirtier, right, in this whole world? A political machine who's been at it for years, or some new guy with no history of such activity. And so you're seeing, like, the Dems, they've spent so much time chasing this Russia stuff, and it's all blowing back on the Clintons. So Trump might have been a bull in a china shop, but the Clintons basically turned a china shop into a crack house. So no matter how they try, it always is going to flow back on the Clintons.
Okay, so Dana...
Mixed metaphors there.
All right, police yourself, thanks.
I'm not done yet.
All right, so Dana, do you think that the communications on this are strong, that she's hitting the right, messaging? This is a topic that's good for the president to try to get ahead and get out.
I think her messaging is fine, but I think the underlying premise of it is something that they should be careful what they wish for. Because the DOJ has an inspector general. The inspector general is an independent person. If they are unhappy with that inspector general, he can be fired. Or she. I don't know who it is at the moment. A special counsel is supposed to go after criminal activity. If the inspector general thinks that it should be referred to a special counsel or to prosecution, that's usually how that should work. And you have the situation where you have I think this is a response of a demand to do something. The wheels of justice turn very slowly. And I think one of the attempts is to try to bog everything down into investigations so that it's just so confusing that nobody knows what the heck is going on, and so that by the time there is a conclusion, nobody trusts it. But I think they should be careful what they wish for. I think there's an inspector general. They should empower them. But if they're unhappy, they should look to the top of the DOJ. I mean, the DOJ is run by the attorney general, Jeff Sessions. If they're unhappy with how he's running his department because he's not utilizing all the powers of it, then maybe that's where they need to make a change.
So Jesse, what about this? So Jeff Sessions, there is a lot of focus and basically, people are saying, what are you going to do about any of this?
He's under a lot of pressure to do something, and I think Dana's right. They're just trying to muddy the waters because if they're worried about another indictment, then they have to raise a lot of suspicion over the prosecutorial team. But you're so right. It's so confusing, and we follow this for a living. Deputy Inspector General, Deputy Attorney General, the FBI, these people on Mueller's team, the special counsel, no one can keep up with it, regular people on the street. No one can even know any of these guys' names. It's so confusing. But there are legitimate conflicts of interest here. Tucker mentioned it last week. I didn't even know this. Mueller hired one of the lawyers who represented the Hillary IT guy that smashed the BlackBerry with hammers. He handpicked his whole team. A majority of them are Democratic donors.
Right.
No Republican donors.
A lot of bias.
I know that's hard in Washington, D.C., but just to create the appearance of more integrity, I think, was important. So he's kind of planted a lot of these landmines himself. And then you have Mueller. He's the mentor of James Comey. James Comey is the central figure in any obstruction case, and he's the one that got fired and then kind of handed it off to his former boss. So now you have the dossier, could have been funded by Hillary and then used as a justification to spy on Trump. And then the point person who was demoted to the HR job, he might have been the point person for the dossier. So it's really confusing. The whole thing is conflicted. It's just swamp politics at its worst.
All right, you need to go do like a swamp whiteboard for Jeff Sessions to be able to
call
figure
Glenn
it out.
Beck. Where's his board?
Where is he when we need him?
He's back at my place.
He's back at your house?
Yeah,
He's working on a diagram?
We're sharing a condo on the shore.
Okay, cool. All right, so Juan, ignore him. And don't ignore Jesse. What do you think about this? He's laid out quite a tangled web.
Yeah, it's a conspiracy theory. I love him. I like to listen.
Like a vast right-wing conspiracy.
Yeah, I mean, what is going on here? I mean, all of a sudden, people can't do their job because they donated to a Democrat. What if you donate to a Republican? That means you can't do your job. Nobody should investigate the president. So Jay Sekulow, one of the president's lawyers, says, oh, this has nothing to do with Robert Mueller. Nothing at all. I just want a second investigation. I'm thinking to myself, what is going on here? Ever since Flynn pled guilty, what we've seen from the White House and their legal and the president's legal team are efforts to call into question the integrity not only of the Mueller investigation, but the FBI. Remember, the president himself said FBI in tatters, worst in history. And, of course, now going after, which is an American company called Fusion GPS, doing what everybody knows. They were initially hired by Republicans, then picked up by the Hillary campaign. Nobody is saying that this is the basis, Jesse, for the subsequent investigation.
I think Mueller's worried about his team's own integrity because he wouldn't have fired people or demoted them. No, and he also hired the guy that partied with Hillary on election night.
What does this matter?
He didn't show up on election night.
Well, I mean, he was at the party. Very expensive party.
This is conspiracy theory.
Right.
But, you know, this is what Trump does.
I think she was napping.
Trump has now characterized this as a witch hunt. And Trump also says this is too costly. Maybe you should just stop. I don't get it. Why would anybody fall for this? Why would Jesse sit here and throw up all this dust? You say people are confused.
Wait, Mueller threw up the dust because he was the one that demoted these people because there was
I would think you would be applauding him because you'd say, okay, if there's an appearance and someone's concerned, like Caesar's wife, you've got to be beyond that, and I will eliminate you from this investigation. You should applaud him.
Here we go.
All right.
Robert Mueller, everybody. Good job.
Coming up. CNN faces scrutiny for alternative programming in the wake of the New York City terror attack. We're going to explain all of it next.
President Trump and his alleged consumption of a dozen Diet Cokes per day.
Corey's book is called Let Trump Be Trump. Here's what he writes in that. On Trump Force One, there were 4 major food groups: McDonald's, Kentucky Fried Chicken, pizza, and Diet Coke.
If we're saying, according to the Times, that he drinks this many, what does this do to the brain and the body every day?
It's replacing a liquid that you can take, which is water. You should be drinking water, not this.
Oh, gosh.
Kimberly's Food Court.
Yes, well, I mean, I don't know. I don't drink a lot of water. I think I'm doing fantastic.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I don't drink that much Diet Coke.
Oh, that's what I was going to ask.
You know, we all got, we used to all like Diet Cokes. We used to beg to have the Diet Cokes in the green room. Like, please, please, we'll be well behaved if you let us get like a 6-pack of Diet Coke. Well, that didn't happen for like how many years, Dana? 5 years. So in the meantime, we all obviously went off of it, kind of cold turkey, so to speak.
No, we bought our own.
And then we used to share one, a little can, and we'd pour a little in a cup for each other, because sometimes it gives you a little pick-me-up. And you know what? If it's working for him, I don't think we should freak out his system and not let him drink Diet Coke.
All right, so two people on this panel.
Chicken, I like it. McDonald's, I like it.
You like it all?
Diet Coke, I like it.
Well, 2 people on this panel drink Diet Coke. You're one.
Not a
Ray
lot.
Gutfeld's the other.
Yeah, water. If you think water's great, look at a fish. Just the fish are the ugliest things on the planet.
hell?
By the way, this whole thing, it's not a diet thing. It's a class thing. You know, the enlightened groups, you know, the enlightened people, they don't drink sodas. Everything's organic and harvested tree bark made from just. Did you ever see some of the juices that are sold? It looks like sewage, raw sewage. So they'd rather spend like $10 on a carton of cashew milk and feel better. By the way, fast food was created for the salesman. You're on the road. This guy, Trump, is a salesman. He's on the road. The road's the sky. That's what you eat. Eating at McDonald's is not gross, and it's not what, like, rubes eat. It's actually what normal people eat. Stop with the moral superiority. Diet Coke's fantastic.
Well, Dana
I
stopped,
swim in it.
Dana stopped drinking it, but I wanted to ask you something else, Dana. So, obviously, yesterday was a big news day. They chose to focus on this story, which was in the New York Times, as part of the New York Times.
Well, maybe they know their audience. Right? Like, we know our audience. We wouldn't do that.
It's easy. You can count them. There's Steve.
Yeah, a Diet Coke for everyone.
There's Steve. There's Joe.
The guy at the airport.
The guy at the airport.
But I think the reason that something like that is included in an article in the first place is because journalists love color.
Yeah.
If that's why the White House every year puts out the menu for the Thanksgiving Day dinner or the meal at the White House or the state dinner, because people love to read about that kind of thing. But I have to say, I stopped on September 8th. It's one of the hardest things I've ever done. But I haven't had one.
You never did drugs.
That's true.
Yeah.
Remember when they had President Obama having 7 almonds? Now they've got Trump having 12 Diet Cokes.
That was story.
7
Did we
almonds?
have that story?
Yes.
Yeah.
That's
We actually damned him. We said proof his birth certificate was fake. He eats almonds.
We didn't do it. The 5 didn't do it.
I think we did talk about it.
I don't think so.
No, we didn't.
I would remember that story.
There's no
But
way.
Jesse,
It's hard to eat 7 almonds.
What kind? Would you drink regular Coke or do you don't drink soda?
I don't.
It's time for one more thing, and I'm up first. The annual tradition of the 5 to pick our secret Santas is happening. The gift reveal takes place on our Christmas Day special. That's less than 2 weeks away if you're counting at home. What is this little thing? Hold on, what's this? Okay, so here, Jesse, this is yours.
Okay.
Here's mine. Greg,
Can we open it now?
You can open it, but don't reveal. Don't reveal. Oh, and then there's another little one in
This
here.
person isn't on the show anymore.
Wait, I feel really bad, but this is an extra one. I looked at it, and it says Jasper.
Oh.
Are you serious?
I'm kidding. No, I'm joking.
I thought you were serious. You want Jasper?
Dana, did you get me? Because yours is going to be good gifts.
I'm not going to reveal. I'm not revealing.
I'm not. I'm keeping it in my pocket.
You did it? You got me?
And also, we want to wish a very happy Hanukkah to all who celebrate. The holiday begins tonight. Juan, you're up.
Well, you know, Christmas time and time for caroling, time for toy soldiers, and the Nutcracker Ballet. Now, at the Washington Ballet, they have a special moment because guess who participates? The baseball team, the Washington Nationals, send the racing presidents out. It's a tradition since 2010. Also making an appearance this year will be first baseman Ryan Zimmerman. It's the Washington Ballet's production of Nutcracker, and it's set in 19th century Georgetown with American historical figures sprinkled throughout. A little bit of Hamilton on the Potomac. Wonderful tradition. I suggest.
Are you still mad about that bad call?
Just hugely frustrated.
Okay, Greg's bored. Kimberly.
All right, well, let's go to mine, which is really good. Well, yeah, you're after me. See, read the prompter. Okay, so this is to honor the 4 hero cops that took down the would-be suicide bomber at the Port Authority. Take a look at them. Picture left to right. Sean Gallagher, Drew Preston, Jack Collins, and Anthony Manfredini. We want to thank them so much for their excellent training, their quick thinking that really helped save lives and being able to get the cell phone, etc., away because they thought that he was going to detonate something further and jumping into action.
While their colleagues went and investigated and interrogated family members.
Correct.
That's what you had to do. Okay, Greg.
Time for...
Wow.
Hey, I don't normally plug books because I only plug books that I actually read. I didn't read this book. But this guy, Elon Gale, he created The Bachelor, which is one of my favorite shows. I watched The Bachelor and The Bachelorette, and then we got screwed when they moved the 5 to 9 o'clock, and I couldn't watch. So he wrote an anti-self-help book called You're Not That Great. And I haven't read it, but I'm assuming if it's by the guy who did The Bachelor, it's going to be great. So if you're a fan of The Bachelor, or even if you're not, an anti-self-help book, You're Not That Great.
I need that.
You do. This is a gift.
I'll take that home.
Yes.
It won't put a dent in him.
Yes.
It doesn't sound like you wanted to do it.
Do
but
what?
By the way,
You didn't want to do it.
Oh, I did. No, I did.
Oh, okay.
But I was...
that was an anti-plug.
Where
That's what
was
it
your
felt like.
graphic?
I don't know. I was just having fun.
Okay, Jesse's next.
Okay, so people make fun of the man flu. You know, guys get sick, they get the sniffles, and it totally incapacitates us. Apparently, the man flu is real. According to a new study in the British Medical Journal, there's physiological differences between men and women, which make men more susceptible to colds and flus and stuff like that. So when we get sick, I don't want to hear about how weak we are or how we just have the sniffles. Our bodies are different, and these things affect us differently, okay? Women are tougher when
Does
it
it
comes
make
to
you
the
whine
flu.
more?
Ooh.
I'm just curious.
They didn't have that in the study.
Okay, we should, maybe that would be round 2.
Yeah,
The
we'll
new
reinvestigate
academic thing.
that.
All right, well, that's interesting. We won't make fun of you.
Well,